Are you buying Buckfast again, Mary?
Oh God, no! I've had Buckfast once in my life, and it's disgusting.
I like it.
I've had it a few times, yeah.
That was just day.
Good morning, Vietnam!
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
I feel the need for speed.
Roads? And we're going, we don't need roads.
Snakes. Why'd it have to be snakes?
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Batman.
I am your father.
Your idea is incredible.
I can't argue with that. We pay for everything. So this country belongs to us.
It's just business. Hunting human beings for sport.
They're not human beings.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Moviescramble podcast. I am obviously saying good evening, but you could be watching this, listening to this, in the morning, the afternoon, night time, whatever you want. But for us, it's evening, so I'm being polite to the people that are live. I'm your host, Thomas. I'm joined by John and Mary. Mary, how are you doing? Are you still locked in that loft?
I definitely am. I think depression has kicked in, and even the arrival of Baby Yoda in my life is not easing the work from home pain at the moment. I will be absolutely delighted when Big Bojo finally announces we can all set foot over our front doors again.
You can leave the house if you want. I just
feel guilty about it though. I feel like if you go out, people are like, oh, what are you doing? And I live in a small enough village and we're new here. I don't want to get a reputation, you know.
Yeah, no any more than you already have anyway. John, how are you doing?
I can go out the house and my reputation is intact, I'd like to say. That's
You're about saying tattles there.
No, that's just my social life at the moment. That's an unfortunate part of all this, that you can't actually go anywhere and do anything. But we persevere, don't we?
We survive, which brings us to the topic of our podcast for tonight. And survival. We are going to review another Blumhouse film because that's all we seem to do these days, is talk about Blumhouse productions. But we are talking about the most controversial film of last year. And it wasn't even released until this year. We're talking about Craig Zobel's The Hunt. I don't want to say too much about the film because the trailer, it's not that it's misleading, but the general premise here is that a group of wealthy, upper-class people are hunting poorer people for apparently sport, for fun. That's all I really want to say in terms of the plot, because that's really the basis of it. And as it unravels, you find out who these wealthy people are, who the lesser members of society are, why they're being hunted, the motives, and it was not what I expected. I was surprised. I can see why the film's caused controversy. I am, however, surprised at the controversy it has created. Does that make sense? I think the controversy of it last year, we had Donald Trump thinking it was very this and very that. Now people think it's very much the other side. It seems to be a film that's pissed off both the left and the right due to its themes. To me, I think the fact that if it has pissed you off, that's the point of it. It's not that it offend for the sake of offending, but if it does piss you off, then I think you're part of the problem. Have I read too much into this film? Its themes, or what's your thoughts?
It's just that you're so woke, Thomas. That's what it is.
I'm definitely broke.
I mean, I can understand why there was like some controversy around it, because ultimately it's humans hunting other humans for sport. There was a serial killer that did that at one point. He released his victims into the woods and sort of told them to run, and he would chase after them. His name escapes me at this moment in time. But actually, in terms of what kind of unfolds on screen, I've seen much more in terms of, violence and torture and controversy. But having said that, I did obviously really enjoy it, and you guys know that because I was messaging you for like the first 20 minutes just saying like, what the fuck? So I did really enjoy it. I actually liked Craig Zobel's previous film from, I think it's like 2013, called Compliance, which again, it's a kind of sort of nasty, kind of provocative piece of cinema that will kind of sort of sit under your skin. I enjoyed this, and I thought there was kind of elements of sort of dark humour in it as well. But I must admit, I don't really get the controversy, because I think it was a film that was definitely made sort of tongue kind of firmly in cheek. So I'm not kind of too sure why it caused such an outrage.
I think the themes were put out there to annoy people to begin with, even before the film came out, and it did have that effect. There was a lot of tweeting about it, a lot of people getting very angry about it, and it was a very deliberate act on the part of the filmmakers. Now, the film was obviously put back because there was a couple of high-profile shootings just when it was supposed to come out, and they didn't want the film to be associated with those in any way. But it didn't actually have anything to do with us. There wasn't anything like that in terms of the plot or the themes of the film, but it was felt best to put it back. By doing so, what they have done is they've kind of taken the heat off it and allowing people to actually go and see it. The rich versus the poor thing is probably the overriding theme of the film. There has been talk of very political elements of it, but what I found with those was it was quite muddied. There wasn't really a red versus blue sort of theme to it in the way that was initially described, because the antagonists within the film, the actual hunters, were described in some terms as liberal elites, but when you actually see some of them, they're very, very far from it. They're quite conservative in their outlook and the way that they actually handle themselves. So you could actually say they were more sort of red than blue or whatever. You know, it's very mixed up, and I think it's done initially to shock and just to get you into the film, and from there, just so you can actually enjoy the film on its terms that it's actually setting out as it goes along. It's quite clever.
Yeah, I thought it was very clever, and it seemed to piss off Donald Trump when the film's managed to annoy the president of the United States before it's even been released. That's a great marketing campaign in itself. And then when the film does come out, at times it takes a swipe at cancel culture and social justice warriors and takes a piss at that element of online politics, so to speak. And I can see that seems to rub people off the wrong way as well, because they don't like being the focus of scorn. People from a certain political persuasion went into the film thinking this is going to be anti-Trump, pro-liberal, blah, 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 and it wasn't. And as you said, John, it was neither red nor blue. It was very much, we're just taking pot shots at everyone here because this is wrong and this is also wrong.
Yeah, nobody emerges from this unscathed, and the sort of the feeling that I got from the group of hunters was almost like the John Doll character in Rope. They just thought they were entitled to kill because they thought that their lives were worth more, or they were more intelligent, or they had contributed more. But that wasn't aligned to any sort of particular political persuasion. It was just a sort of arrogance.
We can talk about the themes in this film and the kind of political aspect of it, and that's what's going to cause the biggest issue. In terms of the actual plot, and you mentioned, Mary, about how the idea of humans hunting humans might cause a controversy. It's not a novel idea in a film. When this film came out, my first instance was, well, we've seen this before. The script itself is loosely based on The Most Dangerous Game, a novel from, I think it was 1930s, that has like rich, big game hunter hunting people for sport because he's basically hunted everybody. They say The Most Dangerous Game is man. You get films like The Running Man that have a similar idea. It's set as a game show, which, when you think about it on paper, is a lot more of a controversial idea. The premise of this movie in itself shouldn't have been an issue, but as you say, John, it came out at a time there was another shooting in America, and people that seemed to think the politics of the movie was going to look bad on them attacked it for that reason. And now after the kind of controversy's been and gone and the dust is settled and the films came out, most people are like, well, the film's not really that bad to begin with. And now they're using that as a stick to beat it with because they don't like the politics in it. And the film is very political, very, as you say, very tongue-in-cheek. It's not preachy.
Yeah, like I think a lot of the sort of there's a kind of scene where the hunters are having a woke conversation, or they sort of try and use kind of human stooges to prompt the hunted to say things that they believe will fit a certain political agenda. But to me, it was so very set up and so very staged, and it was very tongue-in-cheek that, to me, the kind of politics of the film it almost like, it's not that they didn't come into it, because obviously there's a kind of clear divide there, but to me it was more of a sort of maybe a class divide, and I hate saying that because it makes me feel a bit icky, but it was definitely more about, kind of wealthier, rich people and, poorer people with less opportunities. It kind of split into two camps. To me, the politics were so blurred. And when they did sort of attempt to make political statements, they were kind of darkly humorous, so you didn't maybe take it as seriously as other plot points in the film.
And that's the thing, I thought the film was laugh out loud funny at times, and although it was very violent, it was a comic book style violence. It was a movie that revelled in its absurdity. It wasn't, the violence in it was intended to be entertaining. It was supposed to be over the top.
Absolutely, yes. Right from the very start, there's an opening scene where there's a scene of violence, and without obviously going into any detail, because you really should watch it, it is quite comic in the way that it unfolds and the way that it actually ends as well. It works very well, and it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the film. That's what you're kind of expecting. You're not expecting anything to be horrible and graphic without that sort of dark humour attached to it. And it makes a real difference when you're watching something. If there's sort of darkness in a film like that, then you're needing that wee sort of counterbalance of humour. Otherwise, you're basically just watching this horrible, almost like a snuff film or something like that.
Yeah, I mean,
not that I have any experience of watching that, I may say, obviously.
Disclaimer.
Yeah, or making them.
Day 9 of self-isolation, John.
John makes a snuff film.
No, I was just going to say make a snuff film. I was going to say he's exhausted his DVD collection this time he started. But I mean, that's the thing. The idea to say, the violence in the film's entertaining may not even be a very social conscious thing to say these days. But nobody had the same issue when it was John Wick or Fast and the Furious.
Yeah, or even Deadpool or something like that, because it's that kind of, okay, it's not as overt and comic book as that, but it is that kind of, not making fun of the violence, but it's used for a specific effect, and sometimes that effect is humour.
It's not supposed to be real life. It's not depicted as real life. And the violence in this is very on-screen cinema violence. It's very fantastical. It's not supposed to be, when something gets shot, that it looks real. There is some quite, I wouldn't say horrible moments in the films, but some very kind of darkly violent moments. There's also punchline.
Yeah,
I think that's what the film kind of works, is no matter how dark it gets, there'll be a joke to accompany it. It's not a film to sit and take seriously. But
and I guess that's why I didn't get the controversy, because I think I was maybe expecting something that was really grim and quite graphic. So I think, having watched it, I was like, well, I found that really entertaining. And then I was like, oh God, is that the wrong response to have to that? Am I supposed to be really appalled by it? Because there was just so much built up. But as I say, I've seen, like, what if you watch, like, Irreversible or something like that, that has a much more sort of lasting impact on you than The Hunt. I kind of thought it was, like, fun in parts. God, I'm a terrible person.
There's nothing wrong with that. And you see, you could watch John Wick, as I mentioned, and say, well, I enjoyed John Wick. You enjoy John Wick not for Keanu Reeves' stellar acting or the storyline. You watch it because he kills people like at an alarming rate.
Yeah. You're there for the body count, absolutely.
That's why it's that's why, unfortunately, that does pass for entertainment, and it is fun. John Wick films are fun. Fast and Furious films are fun. The Matrix is fun. It's just how it is. There's a market for these kind of films, and I think with The Hunt, it holds a mirror up to audiences, and it basically says, do you recognise yourself in this movie? And I think if people say, yeah, and they're also offended, that's the issue. But if you don't recognise yourself in it, you probably won't get offended.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get that.
There's a few filmmakers that have done that before. If you look at the likes of Michael Haneke with Funny Games.
Well, Funny Games,
exactly
that's what came to mind actually when I thought of this, and I thought I would say that's more dark than.
Oh yes, totally, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Funny Games is. I haven't seen the remake. I've seen the original, and it does have that darkly comic humour to it at times, but that's a harrowing watch. That's very harrowing. But this did remind me a little bit when you mentioned the kind of class warfare aspect, Mary. It was The Purge.
Oh yeah,
by the same production company, interestingly enough. I think it was the fourth one, the first Purge movie. Sorry, the first
Yes.
Purge, it was called. And the poster was a red cap that
Mhm.
said "Make America Purge Again."
A MAGA hat.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's brilliant. At the same time, this movie does have a lot of kind of political aspect to it. When I say politics, I don't just mean White House politics, the American Constitution, the government. It's that online culture that attacks. Like, it attacks cancel culture. It takes it to the next level where they want to cancel people in real life by killing them.
Yeah.
And it is funny. It is funny because it's supposed to be funny. It's supposed to be stupid, but it's also supposed to. I got from the film. It's supposed to show you how stupid these themes are at times.
Yeah, like you saw like the tweets and stuff that they were, so appalled at, and they were, they weren't all particularly vitriolic, but they were reactionary, and that's what people do now. Like now, 50 years ago or whatever, you would have, vented to your neighbor or to a colleague or something. Now people just go online and, I think the president's shit, or I think he's great, or whatever, and that's what people do. That's how they let off steam, and it obviously results in sort of conflicting opinions and arguments online. But this sort of took it to the next level, and it's like, no, you're not just putting that opinion out there because you've had a bad day. Like, everyone can see it, and now we're taking offense to it. So I did quite like that sort of angle to it, that what most people forget is that everything they put on social media is, of course, very, very public.
Yeah, the whole story itself evolves because of social media. There's stuff that happens at the beginning. There's a text conversation, which then leads to certain things happening, and then there's a social media backlash about that. So therefore, that really sort of sets the whole story up. So, and it kind of mirrors what's actually going on in real life, apart from obviously the killing.
Yeah.
Well, we don't know. It could be happening.
I find the fact that it's plausible.
Yeah.
I find the kind of the tone of the, not so much the tone of the film, but the spirit of the film is reflected in real life in a sense, but just turned up to 11.
Yeah, definitely. I liked the fact that he used a couple of wee sort of triggers as well. In the initial text conversation that I mentioned earlier, they used the word deplorables,
Yes.
which was used by Hillary Clinton during the 2016 election campaign. She referred to Trump and his supporters as deplorables. So that's a sort of a trigger word there to try and set the tone, if you like, or maybe even just for misdirection. It sets it up in such a way that you're thinking, right, oh, this is a certain type of people, which it is not again. And the lead of the hunters was called Athena, and Athena was the goddess of wisdom, and also she was the goddess of warfare as well. So there's that kind of juxtaposition between being wise and being a warrior as well, which I thought was quite nice. And it's very subtly done. It's not right in your face.
No, definitely. Athena, played by Hilary Swank, who is so good in this.
Mm-hmm.
She just looks like she's having so much fun, hamming it up, and the whole cast, to be fair. And I thought Betty Gilpin was excellent as the lead.
Excellent. She is.
You
She's
know,
really good.
She just kind of like embodied this badass, shoot first, ask no questions type action hero, and she just was so stern the whole way that in a movie as balls to the wall mental as this was, she seems like the anchor.
Yeah. And she just seemed fed up all the time. She just didn't want to be doing any of it. But when it came down to it, she just got on with it.
Yeah, it was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to do this again. I have to
Yeah.
do the escape route again. But yeah,
Yes.
she was absolutely brilliant. And I'm not really familiar with her as an actress, but I know she's been in Glow and certainly has got really good reviews for that. But I thought she was, really, really good. I thought it got slightly kind of not ridiculous towards the last like 15, 20 minutes, but it kind of lost a wee bit of its appeal for me then, but even then she was still really, really engaging throughout it all.
I don't think the lockdown is going to hamper it in any way. Obviously, it was only out for a week before cinemas across the US and basically everywhere else started to close. So it didn't take that much money in its opening week. I think it was something like $5.3 million. But having said that, that's half of its budget and publicity right there. So put it out onto video on demand almost right away, and I think it's going to do very well. There's going to be a lot of people seeing it.
And on an interesting side note, sales of guns in America have gone up during lockdown, so who knows?
Life imitates art and art imitates life. This film is a big recommend from me. I really enjoyed it. Mary?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think your phrase gets it pretty much spot on. It's just balls to the wall mental.
John?
Same, yes. We seem to be going through a patch of just agreeing with each other on just about everything at the moment, which won't last, of course. But yes, I agree with on this one. It was a pretty good watch. Really enjoyed it, but not in a deep and meaningful kind of way. You just go on with it and watch it. It's a film. What the hell, yeah.
Yeah, if you want to really have like disagreements, we should review Maniac Cop for the next episode. And we'll see how we agree.
You are really pushing this agenda, aren't you?
What state is this?
Sorry.
You don't understand the question?
Oh, no, I didn't. Most people know where they are.
Why ain't most people?
That was our thoughts on The Hunt. As we said, we really recommend it. It is available on demand just now, as we can't go anywhere. And Blumhouse has started putting their films like Invisible Man, which we also recommend, and that episode's available in the Moviescramble archives. And The Hunt is available on demand. Please download it, rent it, watch it, enjoy it. Let us know your thoughts. If you do like it, if you don't like it, keep them to yourself. We're not interested. Based on the themes of survival regarding The Hunt, we have picked our top 3 survival movies. I like this topic because it was quite varied in the genres we could pick. Nothing was really kind of pigeonholed. I was tempted to pick Friday the 13th Part 6, which I believe most kind of incorporates that survival element as Jason's hunting people down, but I managed to avoid... I was going to say I managed to avoid any franchise movies. That's a total lie. I've managed to avoid any Part 9s or 6s or sequels. But we've all picked our top 3 survival movies. And it's a very interesting list. I'm very excited to talk about this. And I believe I'm first. Am I first?
You are.
I'm first for a while. It's not happened recently. I was going to say something that just sounded dirty. So I think I
It's all right. What you've already said is enough.
I have went with 2000, and I can't believe this film's 20 years old. Battle Royale. It was directed by Kinji Fukasaku, and it's a dystopian thriller movie where it's Japan in the near future, and they basically deal with unruly school classes by picking one of the worst classes at random, putting them on an island, putting collars on their neck, and forcing them to fight to the death until there's only one survivor. If this movie sounds familiar, it's because it should. The Hunger Games ripped it off royally, and there's no pun intended there. The survival element comes into it, and you've got the students, they're on this island. We focus on some of the kind of main characters, and they team up because you've got the couple who are in love, and it's they just basically try to survive this out and find their way out of it. They're not interested in playing the game. They're interested in the two of them leaving the island, but obviously they both can't because there can only be one winner. Have you seen this movie?
I have seen this movie. I love this movie. I think it's fantastic. Fits in quite well with our discussion of The Hunt as well with regards to the violence, because there's an awful lot of over-the-top violence, but there's sort of comedic elements to it as well. And some of it is kind of horrific in a way. You're looking at it and you're going, oh! It is kind of like crossing your legs type moments, which is interesting. And it's just brilliant. It works really well, and it sets out still very early, and it just goes for it.
Yeah, this movie was very, very controversial when it came out as well. It was referred to by the Japanese. I think it was their equivalent of the Bold of Censors, and they called the movie crude and tasteless. For 11 years, the film was never officially released in the US or Canada, except for film festivals. It wasn't shown in schools or anything like that. And when you watch it, it's not that controversial a movie.
Yes, but it involves school children.
I was going to say, I think it's probably the children element of it that makes it controversial. If they had shipped a bunch of adults off to an island, it would have been maybe okay. But
Yeah,
it's
possibly.
kids.
And don't get me wrong, I've not got the cast, the date of births to hand, but they're not an old cast. It is a young cast, and whether they're actually legitimately school children or late teens in real life, they look it. And this came out at a time in the early 2000s where Asian cinema really had that extreme reputation for really graphic violence. You had movies that came after, like Itchy the Killer, Old Boy, mentioned Asian cinema in the Parasite episode, and the fact that it's always been held in this high regard. And Battle Royale is one of those movies that really brought Asian cinema to the forefront, in my opinion, and helped put it on the map for Western audiences. And made it, honestly, you need to see it. It's a brilliant movie.
It's on my watch list, actually. It was the first film that Chris mentioned when I talked about the theme of this week. He absolutely loves it, so it is on my watch list.
Yeah, and it
And
stars
the kids beating the shit out of each other.
exactly. It stars Takeshi Kitano as the school teacher who is overseeing the whole operation. And if you've not seen him, he's like an excellent actor. He's like the Tom Hanks of Japan.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, but he's also known for like being a celebrity as well. Like, outside acting, he's known for all these different kind of like entertainment roles. You heard of Takeshi's Castle?
Yeah.
That's him.
All right, okay.
He's a brilliant actor, absolutely brilliant actor. It's worth watching for him alone. But yeah, it's an excellent movie. Some amount of controversy it caused. Still got a legacy to this day. Threats to remake it never happened, thankfully. Please watch it.
Okay.
You'd like it.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
My first choice is the 2016 South Korean film Train to Busan. It's directed by Yeong Sang-ho, stars Gong Yoo, Jung Yoo Mi, and Ma Dong Seok. It's a zombie film before anything else, but it's a zombie film that is set, surprisingly enough, on a train to Busan. Basically, a disease, a virus, if you like, is unleashed into the wild, and it starts to spread across a city. Now, in this city is a young man with a daughter. He's recently divorced from his wife, and his daughter is missing her mother terribly, so he agrees, mainly out of guilt, to take her on a train trip to her home in Busan. Now, they got on the train and everything's peachy and nice until just as the train's pulling at the station, a woman comes on who has been infected, and the first thing she does is she eats the train guard, basically, starts infecting him and therefore infecting everybody else. As the train's leaving the station, there's reports of all sorts of hell breaking loose in the city and the surrounding areas. All the passengers decide at the next station to get off, and then they find that the next city is exactly the same. And in the confusion of them all trying to get back onto the train, they all get separated. So the man gets separated from his daughter. She's maybe about 5 or 6 carriages away from him. So him and a couple of others have to try and get from one carriage of the train to another, which is somewhat distant, and it's full of infected people. And it's how they do this, the inventive way they actually manage to get through the various carriages. Sometimes they use just outright violence. There's a lot of blood in this, a lot of gore. Sometimes they have to use a wee bit of stealth. There's some nice wee elements that they use. There's some comedic touches to it. And it's a fantastic film. It's very fast paced, basically because I think they're trying to mirror the fact that they're on a train and they're sort of pounding towards this destination. And it just works so well, just as this 90-minute sort of express ride. And obviously the whole survival element is the fact that they're trying to survive this horde of zombies who just are intent on eating them, because basically that's what zombies do, let's face it. Have either of you seen this movie?
Yeah, I love this movie. I almost seen it for the first time. I think it was maybe last year. So I was quite late to the party when it came to it. But yeah, I love this movie. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I can't really add much else other than what you've said. You've summed it up perfectly. It's a zombie movie. It's got a nice twist to it. It's got a fresh idea, introducing the train, and this moving train. It's a really fast-paced, energetic film. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen this either. I'm feeling a bit shit this week.
Do you watch Asian cinema?
Yeah, it's not like I've got a prejudice against it or anything. I do watch a lot of Asian cinema. I just haven't seen these two particular films.
Cancel.
I was actually. I've been trying to find a copy
You
of it.
promise
Walter
not to
White
bring
and the
this up
Witch
about
for ages.
Mary's prejudices.
Because I am a wee bit of a pussy when it comes to horror films. I kind of have to psych myself up for watching it. But no, it is on my Prime watch list. I'm pretty sure it's still on there. So my first pick is a bit grim compared to you guys. You guys have this kind of fun element to your picks. This is definitely one of those films that you have to endure, and it is Steve McQueen's 12 Years a Slave, which stars Chiwetel Ejiofor and Lupita Nyong'o and Michael Fassbender, to name but a few. So it's based on the real life story, the diaries of Solomon Northup, who was a successful black musician in the north of America who was kidnapped and sold into slavery, obviously in the deep south. And this story is a story of his survival, his attempts to get back to his wife and children in the north, and basically how long it takes to achieve that. And Steve McQueen just goes all out. This is certainly a film where there's no, happy, grateful slaves, singing songs while they pick cotton. This is a film where, there's rape, there's lynching, there's extreme violence, but there's also real acts of humanity and tenderness as well to sort of offset that, although they are very, very few and far between. It's a film that really, expresses how humiliated, the African Americans were from the moment they were sold and why they were sold, picked on things like, how their hips looked or how wide their shoulders looked or how their teeth looked, and just really, really reduced to nothing more than livestock, essentially. And Chiwetel Ejiofor, gives this really sensitive, frustrating performance at the heart of all this as he battles to get back to his family, and it's really, really shocking. I remember watching it at the cinema and kind of feeling kind of unable to control my emotions quite a lot of the time, and it just kind of puts into perspective. It's not an area of cinema that Hollywood likes to dabble in too much, obviously because the slave trade was so rife in America and they don't really like to introspect that way. But it is absolutely brutal, but so worth watching. There's some really good supporting performances in there as well from the likes of Benedict Cumberbatch and Sarah Paulson and Brad Pitt. It's one of those films that you do endure rather than enjoy, but it's a really well-made piece of cinema.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's an incredible movie, absolutely incredible, and it should leave you shaking by the end of it. It really should, and the performances all over the board. There's nobody that phones anything in, and not that you'd expect him to phone in something of a movie like this, especially with director Steve McQueen. I haven't watched it since it came out, and again, I don't know if it's something I would be in a hurry to watch again, but would recommend it to everybody to watch.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I've seen it, but I'm in no hurry to revisit it any time. It's a harrowing film. It really is. It's difficult to say that you enjoy a film like this, but it's more than just enduring. You take something from it. It kind of reflects back on your own prejudices in a way as well. So,
yeah.
But yes, very good performances all round.
Yeah, and it's kind of one of those films as well. When I first seen the trailers for it, I thought, yeah, I quite like the look of this. And I thought it was going to be just like spun through the Hollywood machine, make everything quite sensationalist, and here's the bit where you tick for the Oscar, and it was nothing like that at all. It was a very hard-hitting and gritty, and that's what it should have been. And I'm not saying if it did it the other way, it would have been bad. It's just, this was no frills to it.
Yeah, it was unflinching, to use an overused word. But then Steve McQueen is like that, and he definitely, obviously, being a person of colour himself, obviously had a story to tell and wanted to tell it as faithfully as possible. And actually, having read Solomon Northup's diaries, what you see on screen is pretty much to a T what's in the journals that he kept.
But it's interesting enough about the film. Do you know it got a lot of controversy because of its ending?
Yeah, because they said that it was a white savior thing. But again, if you read the diaries, that is exactly what happened. So it's not, and I can't imagine somebody like Steve McQueen would phone something like that in and make it a white person if it didn't need to be. So it's very faithful to what actually happened.
Excellent choice. Very, very highbrow. So I'm going to take it down a notch. Of course, so I'm going to go with a film I'm sure both of you have seen, and it's one of the greatest action movies ever, let alone of the 80s. I'm going to go with John McTiernan's Predator, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, Bill Duke, Carl Weathers, Jesse Ventura. This movie is just drips of testosterone. It's so iconic, and its script, it's the dialogue, the themes of it. It's just, I think this film is very underrated. I don't think it's any credit for how good it is because it's seen as an Arnie action film. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But for those that are not familiar with the plot, there's an alien from another planet that, as aliens tend to come from other planets, arrives on Earth with the sole intention of hunting the most dangerous animal can find. Kind of like The Hunt, but in this case, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger's team of mercenaries. The Predator in the movie, again, kind of like The Hunt, it wants a challenge. In The Hunt, the hunted are given the option to pick up some weapons to make it a bit more fair. The Predator does the same thing. It only goes after people that can give it a good fight. And who better than Arnie and his team? I first seen this movie when I was a kid. I watched it maybe at least once a year. It's incredible. It was so unique and original for its time. I think it's aged very well. The effects, for the most part, really stand up. It's got a real sense of claustrophobia, a real sense of danger. And you watch the movie and you think to yourself, right, Arnie's going to be okay here. He's the hero. But that element of danger, anybody seems to can die at any moment. You have no idea who's going to live, who's going to survive. And you've got these big, muscle-bound action heroes of the 80s scared. They're not all just... and let's go back to John McTiernan, who directed Die Hard. He wants to add a kind of human element to his heroes. There's a lot of one-liners in this. It is very cheesy, it is very testosterone, it is all masculine. There's a scene when they're building traps, very homoerotic, they've all got their tops off and they're sweating, and like pulling ropes and stuff. It's almost like glistening muscles. It is very cheesy, but it's a very good movie. I love this movie, and the sequels are okay, but the first one, it's an absolute masterpiece in my opinion. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yes, I actually have seen this one, so I feel quite proud of myself. I just think don't get me wrong, I only saw it a few years ago for the first time, and I think within the first 10 minutes they had said something fairly homophobic and fairly misogynistic, so I was like, don't know if I'm going to like this. But actually, the more it goes on, it's like this sort of enjoyable romp, isn't it? It's just kind of classic 80s blockbustery type cinema, and it has aged really well in terms of the effects and stuff like that.
Maybe not the script.
But it's one of these kind of enjoyable pieces of cinema. I've not seen any of the sequels or anything like that, so I'm not too sure how it pans out. Thomas, I'm sure you'll be the expert on this, but no, I enjoyed it as a kind of standalone sort of, as I say, kind of classic 80s action movie.
I've seen all of the Predator films, actually, which shouldn't really be a surprise because I think they're all brilliant. The first one is the best. It works really well, and as I can only echo what you say about the fact that it has aged very well. I think a lot of that's got to do with the fact that it's practical effects that they use most part. The Predator is real. It's not a CG creation or anything. It's very much there. The film, I think it was a basketball player or something, was actually within the suit.
Kevin Peter Hall, his name was,
Yeah.
He also played Harry and the Hendersons.
Yes, of course, yeah. And it works really well because of the design of the Predator and the fact that it blends very well with the jungle background. And like you say, there's these sort of muscle-bound guys, but they are actually a smart bunch of guys. Like they're there for a reason, and they're there because they're really well trained and everything, and they work very well as a team, and basically they're killers, and that does come across very well in the film as well. So you do get that sense of, well, if these guys are scared of this, then it must be something really pretty bad that's stalking them. And it does stalk them as well. Like you say, it doesn't just kill indiscriminately. It wants the fight. It wants the hunt. It's all about the sport of it. The trophies, because it always takes trophies as well, usually in the form of a skull and the backbone of whoever it manages to kill. Just brilliant film, works really well. My next pick is a very recent film from 2019, a film called Arctic. It stars Mads Mikkelsen as a pilot who is stranded somewhere in the Arctic Circle after crashing his plane. Now, this film is in sort of 3 distinct acts. The first act of the film is the character of Overgaard, which is Mikkelsen, in his daily routine, how he survives. He sets traps, he fishes on the ice and various things, and he has a wee run-in with a polar bear, but nothing terribly serious, so he's still able to survive. And just as you're getting into that and into the routine of everything, he finds that a helicopter has just passed him, and it turns round, and unfortunately where it tries to land, it actually crashes, killing the pilot, but the co-pilot survives. So now he's in a position where he's stuck in the middle of nowhere. He doesn't know where he is, and he's basically got an injured person that he needs to look after. Now, from the crashed helicopter, he finds a few things, a map to get to a hut a couple of days away from it. It's some sort of hunting lodge or something, but it offers the hope of some sort of civilization and possibly a link with the outside world. So he and the injured person start out on a journey across the tundra, and it's all the problems that they face in terms of the conditions, which are brutal, and the fact that there's a polar bear who's wandering after them because all it can smell is the fish that they've caught. And it's bleak and it's engrossing as well. It's a film that is very much centered on one performance. It works really, really well based on the fact that Mads Mikkelsen is a fantastic actor. There isn't a whole lot of dialogue in this film, basically because he's got nobody to talk to, and they don't use any sort of nice techniques where he starts talking to himself in order to explain a bit of the plot and a bit about the background about him and things like that. There's nothing like that explained at all. It's basically you're just planked down with him, and he's been there for maybe about 2 months or something. So you don't know anything about him at all, and it really just sets the film up so nicely because you're in the position where you don't know what's going to happen and how he's going to cope with it, because you've got no idea what his set of skills are, if he has a set of skills other than being able to catch a fish through the ice. Wonderful movie. Have either of you seen it?
I have not, and I'm surprised you haven't made it, because I know you love Mads Mikkelsen.
I do. I love a bit of Mads, actually. But if he's stranded in the Arctic, chances are he's not going to get his kit off. So that may be why it has limited my watching of it. But no, that sounds amazing. That does sound really good. Okay, so my next choice, again, God, I feel like I've picked really grim films, is the Italian film starring Roberto Benigni, Life is Beautiful. And this is a kind of weird film for so many reasons. Basically, Roberto Benigni is an Italian Jewish stand-up comedian, and yet he's made this film that's really well known about the Holocaust. And it's a film that actually the kind of whole idea of World War II doesn't come into it for quite a while, because the opening of the film is Benigni starring as Guido trying to woo his wife. Dora and her family don't really approve, and he's kind of acting the fool. And it's this beautiful kind of sweeping love story, and it'll never make you'll hear Offenbach's Baccarol through it, and it's just a really beautiful piece of music, and it's this kind of sweeping romance. And then World War II sort of erupts out of nowhere, and obviously with Benigni's character Guido being Jewish, he is sent to a concentration camp along with his son Yeshua, and in order to sort of keep him both alive and help him to survive, Guido devises this story for his son that they're basically in a big game, and that they have to do certain things to win certain points. So things like, go to sleep at the right time, don't cry, don't ask for extra food, keep hidden. And he's basically doing this out of sheer desperation to keep his son alive. And it's a really sort of touching, emotional, and yet really harrowing and horrific film. It's kind of a film of two halves almost. In the first half, you'll get sort of swept up in the romance, and in the second half, you're just like, Jesus Christ, this is awful. There are children involved in this, and it really is about kind of how survivor's instinct. But for this character of Guido, because he is kind of a bit of a fool and a clown, that sort of comes in the form of games and playfulness just to keep this beautiful wee boy alive. And it's a really it's a different take on Holocaust drama or World War II drama. But I think it's a really brilliant film, and it's a wee bit schmaltzy and cheesy in some places, but I think it's a really good way of showing how some people coped with the Holocaust and coped with trying to survive, because essentially, a lot of people say, if you can't laugh at things, and it's not encouraging you obviously to laugh at the Holocaust, but it is sort of showing you coping mechanisms of how people survived and how they got through it. I assume both of you have seen it. It's quite an old classic, isn't it?
Never seen it.
No.
Oh. Okay, I'm back on intelligence levels now. It's a really beautiful piece of cinema. I really love it, and as I say, it might not be for everyone because it is a wee bit different in its take on things, but it definitely is. It definitely is worth a watch.
From what you've said about it, it seems to be some echoes of that sort of story in the likes of Jojo Rabbit as well, in terms of the innocence of the child and everything, trying to maintain that.
Absolutely, and I know kind of Jojo Rabbit gets slagged off for its ending. They said it was too upbeat, but this is a film that definitely, the character of Guido acts the clown the whole way through. Like, he's in the concentration camp, making fun of the way the guards walk and sort of gurning and making these kind of funny facial expressions just because he wants his kid to stay alive. Mm-hmm. And we did get a wee bit of shtick for that because they were like, oh, this is kind of poking fun. But actually, I see it as a coping mechanism. That's how he wants his son to survive.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
I have went with a classic, an old 60s classic. It's also a zombie movie. Like Train to Busan. This is seen as the granddaddy of zombie movies. I've went with George Romero's 1968 Night of the Living Dead. And this is a movie that's not only spawned a few sequels, it's spawned an entire genre of movies. I went with this one, not because it's my favourite. I actually think Dawn of the Dead is a better film, but I believe this really does harness the survival aspect a lot more. And it was the first one to do it. When you've got a motley crew of people of different backgrounds, all stuck together in a house, just try to see the night through, while zombies are outside and try to break their way in. It's a very low budget movie, and it shows in many ways, but it still has, the themes of it still stand up, and the horror aspect still stands up, and there's a sort of very claustrophobic feel as the humans are all trapped in this house and they don't go on. They have arguments, they have issues, they have fights, and there's a pissing contest between the males to see who should be taking over taking as leader in that. And it was also very controversial for its time as George Romero cast a black man as the hero. This is a time in movies where black men tend to be stereotyped. They weren't necessarily the hero, especially in a movie where the rest of the cast are white. And although George Romero did say there's nothing political about the reason for it, there is elements of racial themes in the movie. Have you seen it? Have both of you seen it before I say the end?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm going to mention the end because it is a bit old. If you haven't seen it, pause it. But at the end, Ben, played by Dwayne Jones, is the only survivor. And then it's shot. It's shot by the cops who believe him to be a zombie, allegedly. And you're just like, what the fuck?
That's a new excuse for shooting black guys.
Yeah, pretty much. And you kind of, this film was released in 1968, and you watch this, and you kind of, Dwayne Jones is excellent in the role, very, very good. And you get to the end, and he's the hero. Like films of this type, the hero wins the end, and he just gets shot and flung in a fire. His body burned, and you're like, wow, didn't see that coming. It's such a downbeat ending. And it almost, if it wasn't for the fact that it was a black man, and it gave this whole new level of his death, it would make the survival element to the movie a lot more pointless. I'm not a big fan of movies that kind of keep everybody alive and then just kill them at the end. Or even worse, you have one survivor and then the beginning of the sequel kills them off right away. You're just like, what was the fucking point? But with this, it was just a very unique for the time. The idea, like I said, the claustrophobia. You've got kind of these people all stretched up in the house, forced to work together, but they don't get on. It was a zombie movie, but it had a lot of realism injected into it. It felt plausible in terms of how people interacted.
Yeah, it's extremely tense, I would say, and it's like you see, it's one of those films where I've obviously watched it a lot later than when it came out, but once you watch it, you're like, oh, there's so many films that have clearly used elements of this movie, even just like from the ensemble cast and the sort of tensions, and as you say, the kind of pissing contest between the two guys and the being trapped in the one location. There's so many films that have clearly been inspired by this, but it's kind of the sort of the original, isn't it? And yeah, I mean, I know it's a wee bit dated, but I still thought it was scary.
My next choice is the 2015 film The Revenant, directed by Alejandro González Iñárritu. It's a particularly well-known film, basically because it's the film that finally got Leo his Oscar after much campaigning over maybe the previous decade, I would say. The film is set in 1823. Leo plays a character called Hugh Glass, who is a trapper, and he has a pawnee son named Hawk. They're looking after the trappers in camp, and it's obviously a very brutal environment. It's where real men go and hunt beavers and get their pelts in order to take them back and sell them. It's, however you get your kicks. There's obviously a very famous scene in it where Glass is attacked by a grizzly bear and left for dead. And because of that, and because they've just been attacked by the local native tribes as well, everybody else basically buggers off back to the fort and leaves Glass under the protection of a man called Fitzgerald and Bridger as well as his son. Now, Fitzgerald can't be bothered looking after him, so he tries to kill Glass. Fails to, because Glass's son comes back. Instead, he kills his son right in front of him, and basically after that, buggers off, leaves him for dead. And it's at that point that the survival part of it really kicks in. Basically driven by the rage of seeing his son murdered in front of his eyes, it drives him on to try and get back to civilization and exact his revenge. Now, this basically takes up, I would say, about an hour of this film. Him trying to get himself able to travel using crude surgery, which is not very pleasant to watch, then being attacked by natives, and then being attacked by French trappers, and everything to do with that. It's just unbelievable. The things that he goes through. He cuts open the belly of a horse at one point to sleep in to try and give him some sort of heat, and it's just, it's absolutely disgusting. It's a great film. It's a great performance by Leonardo DiCaprio, but it's the whole setting and everything around it. There's not a bad performance in that. You're looking at the likes of Tom Hardy, Domhnall Gleeson, and Will Poulter as well, all giving top-notch performances. Tom Hardy's doing that sort of maybe every third word you can understand kind of thing, that kind of performance that he tends to fall back on now and again. But even then, it still kind of matches the character, because the character's completely horrible, and you kind of know what he's saying anyway, even when he's not actually uttering anything. He's just really almost like a real horrible bad guy in it. Great film, great survival story. Maybe not one I would go back and watch again, because once you've seen it once, I don't know how much more there actually is to it. But I could be persuaded, I suppose. But I've got plenty of other things to watch in the meantime.
My last pick is the quite literal story of being stuck between a rock and a hard place. It is Danny Boyle's 127 Hours. This obviously stars James Franco and tells the true story of Aaron, or Aaron, depending on how you pronounce it, Ralston, who was a mountaineer, a hiker, and he goes out in the mountains, obviously in Utah, and trips and falls and finds himself with his wrist crushed by a boulder and unable to escape. And obviously, with it being the middle of nowhere, his cries for help go unanswered. And the film is really, again, it's kind of not an endurance, but it is one of those films that makes you think, like, what would I do if I was in that situation? And to be quite honest, the answer is, like, cry myself to death. I have no outdoor skills whatsoever. But James Franco, completely carries this film. You see him, he's recording his video diaries just in case, somebody finds him and he wants to give that along to his parents and his loved ones, and he's sort of flitting between kind of being lucid and then hallucinating because he's so sunburned and hasn't eaten. And there's scenes where obviously he tries to drink his own piss, and then there's the, can I say it, it's old enough, obviously he has to eventually cut his own hand and arm off in order to escape, and that is just grim as fuck. Like, you can hear the cartilage. It is really, really grim. But again, it's kind of an ultimate, man versus nature sort of survival story, and I just think it's really well shot. And I think for somebody who often kind of plays the fool a little bit, I think James Franco really, really carries this film really well. And it's very much a true test of survival skills out in the wild, and how you sort of, not only how you keep yourself going physically, but how you keep yourself going mentally when it seems like the odds are stacked against you. But I think it's a really, really good film.
Danny Boyle is one of my favourite filmmakers. He's so versatile. He never makes the same film back to back. And I mean that genre-wise, it's very hard pressed to watch a Danny Boyle film and say, that's a Danny Boyle film. Trainspotting, Yesterday, 127 Hours. These films are nothing like the other.
Yeah.
They're just so unique from each other. He's an incredible filmmaker, and this, again, is something unlike anything he'd made before.
It was a film that kind of, not courted controversy, but it kind of maybe became a wee bit infamous because of the hand cutting off scene. But honestly, it's kind of the least I mean, it's grim, but it's kind of the least of the film, if you know what I mean. There's so much more to it than just that.
John, did you like it?
I did. I really enjoyed it. I really liked the fact that this was the film that he made after winning the Oscar for Slumdog Millionaire.
Yes.
He used his cachet from that to get this made because this was the film that he wants to make. And on paper, if you look at it, it's not a film that would be easily financed. It's about a guy cutting his hand off, and the guy is an absolute dick as well. There's very few redeeming qualities about this guy. It's not like a sturdy outdoorsman who's trying to get back to his loved ones. This guy is horrible, and he's admitted it himself. I've seen interviews with the guy afterwards, and he says, "Yeah, that was me. That's what I was like. I was very self-absorbed. Didn't care about anybody else. I didn't really care about myself to a certain extent. It was all about the experience, getting out there and doing this." So the fact that Danny Boyle chose this project and was able to get off the ground and actually make something as good as this, given that it was sort of a bit of a passion project for him, it's just absolutely amazing. I like the fact that there was one very small piece in the film where he's talking about his knife and how he took out pretty much his second best knife that was a wee bit blunt, and that's the one he ended up having to cut off his arm with because he didn't want to take his best one because that was, that's only for for special occasions, if you like, Oh, that's that wee touch there, and that was, that kind of preyed on his mind a wee bit, saying, yeah, I'm a complete dick. Everything that I've done is just exactly the same, and it really backs it up that I'm using this shitty knife to cut off my arm here.
Yeah.
And the way that they actually do that scene as well, you don't see anything, but it's all to do with the atmosphere of it, and you see the sound design and everything as well. So your imagination just runs wild. It just completely goes. It's very, very good filmmaking.
So it's true. We're being hunted.
If you do have any suggestions for survival movies, you can still let us know. You can let us know at Moviescramble on Instagram, at Facebook, on Twitter. You can email us at podcast@moviescramble.co.uk. John, have you had any more emails recently?
No, we have not had a single email. It's almost as if there's an apocalypse happening.
People are too busy stockpiling toilet paper. Survival. That's what it's all about.
We have had some feedback, haven't we, Mary-Do?
You say that like you're leading me to something.
Yes. You had some good feedback in the podcast. You've verified our
Oh
listeners.
yeah, oh actually yeah. I do have. We have listeners, plural. So my colleague Aisling was raving about it. I put a wee post on LinkedIn during the week, and one of our clients actually commented saying that she started listening as well. And one of my other colleagues, Mina, hello Mina, if you're listening, has started listening this week as well, because we all have loads of free time on our hands. So we're acquiring fans. This apocalypse is good for our ratings.
Just also to say that we have a YouTube channel, Moviescramble. If you search for that, there's loads of videos on there. We obviously put our podcast on there as well. Come and join that community if you like. And we are also on Spotify, where we put up playlists for the various topics that we discuss.
Oh, just think about it. You should definitely put the Baccarat on for this week for Life is Beautiful and just let people chill out to that. That would be lovely.
Yes,
Absolutely.
I don't think we have any news this week, but we do have a message that's just came in this second with my friend Richard, who is a loyal listener of his podcast, doesn't miss an episode, and not just because he likes me, because I think he skips my parts and mutes them. He has gave us his top 3 survival movies off the top of his head. He's went with The Grey for the Liam Neeson movie. The Martian, that's an excellent choice. You know, if you're going to be stranded, try to survive, why be in the woods, why be in a forest, why be at sea, from another planet. It's a very good choice. And he's went with Dawn of the Dead, which was my original pick, but I went with Night of the Living Dead instead. So good choice, good choices there, Richard, and good movies as well. I'd recommend everybody watches all of them in that order. Any order you wish, it's up to you.
Yep, nice, very good.
So I'm going to give a shout out to Richard for sending them in. Thanks very much. Do you have any shout outs before we go?
Not this week, no. Don't have anything.
I've exhausted my listener shout outs.
Yes. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. It's all about surviving just now. Everybody stay safe. Please do. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Of all the people you kidnapped, of all the people you killed, you picked the wrong game. Lady, you're crazy.